Okay, can you? Okay, I think the sounds good. So, and foremost, thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Professor Veloso to set this event. I think there is a okay. Thank you, Professor Veloso, to organize this meeting here. Also, thank Professor Dolan, my Canadian advisor. So I'd like to thank Professor Hatton, who is not here, but it's also an important part of this network. So basically, today's presentation, I will discuss about a specific regime of non-state governance of violence in a poor neighborhood located in the south zone of Recife. Let me see the slide. Okay. Basically, throughout this presentation, I will show what are the characteristics of this regime.
Just 1 second, Ricardo. Can you share the screen?
From
Zoom, I think it's going to be easier. So
okay.
those on YouTube.
I think we better do this.
Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
So as I was just saying, throughout this presentation, I will show what are the characteristics of this regime, who are the main characters, how they work, and I will try to establish the limits of this regime. And based on the findings that I will present here, I will try to seek to contribute to the explorations of new types of no-governance of violence regime, which I think is poorly addressed in the current empirical studies. So, on here, this is the. So just before I start, dig into my data and the theory, I think it's important to put a bit of a context about Recife. I don't know how many of you have heard about this Recife, because it's not one of the most famous Brazilian cities. But just to put a bit of the context, I put some data here about the city, largest city in Brazil. If you took the consideration, the metropolitan area is the 4th large of the country. Recife has the 13th largest GDP of the country. And those last 3 data are the most updated data and show that things are not very good there. The city has the 3rd worst average income among Brazilians metropolis. It's the 7th Brazilian capital with the highest homicide rate. And basically 13% of the population lives in extreme poverty, which is something like 40 Canadian dollars per month, approximately. So as you can see, Recife, as any Brazilian metropolis, is a city with a bunch of islands of prosperity, but a whole lot of islands of inequality, social problems, and contradictions. And about the community where I carried this research, I will refer to the place as the community, just say it's a place with approximately 12,000 inhabitants. 19% of the population is considered very poor. And in a span of 18 years, I was able to find 123 murders there. And still today, more than 2,000 residents still lives in silt houses. I don't know if this is the right translation. We call in Portuguese palafita, which is it's a very poor conditions of sanitary sewage and live. So here I put these pictures here because there is a Brazilian expression that say, this is represent Brazil more than soccer and samba. And I think it doesn't get much more Brazilian than this. In the left side, as you can see, is the community. The type of house that I just mentioned, as you can see, is very precarious. And on the right side, you see this type of beach, kind of like Miami. But no, it's just 10 minutes away if you take a walk from a spot to another. It's just to illustrate how it's an unequal city and full of social problems. Just here, an apartment in that fancy address can cost millions, penthouses even more so. And they are basically in the same space. Okay. Here, okay. So let's move on to the methods, right? This study was based on an ethnography that started back in 2018. Especially in the second semester of the year, I went to the community and lived there for 6 months. And then I keep going in 2019, but not living there, like in and out. And in 2020, of course, the pandemic hit hard. And I have to stay away for the fieldwork research for almost 2 years. So in the beginning of 2022, I was able to resume my fieldwork activities, and then I did until August of 2022. I also did a number of interviews, a lot of informal conversation, the name of the place, and the people involved here that I'll quote in the next slides are changed to protect them for any problems. And also, I think it's very important to address this. This case selection is not a representative sample of the phenomenon in the city. So this type of regime that I'll show here is not the type of regime that it's present in all the Recife's periphery. So it's a located phenomenon. So I can talk about Recife here based on this study, right? So this is very important to address. This study has a very clear limitation, very clear limit. So moving on to, I think it's important to put here a clear conceptual definition of what I understand as a non-state governance regime of violence. For me, a non-state governance regime of violence is a set of arrangements that seeks to regulate the use of force outside state institutions. Regardless, all the scopes, foundations, and types, I think all non-state governance regime of violence have the same goal: regulate the use of force, defining who can use it, how and when. So in this table here, basically, I did a classification of the empirical studies in the area. And then I was able to find three types, basically, in three types of regimes. The most research, I think it's one of the most hot topics now in criminology. I don't know if it's only the criminology that I'm reading, but there is plenty of new studies about this. Is the criminal regimes, right? So, just a second here. Basically, when a criminal group establishes a violence governance regime, they might create forms of rule, conflict resolution, local police, and sanction crimes. But I think it's important to say that not every criminal group is interested in establishing a governance regime of violence, and not every criminal group has the capacity of this. So these characteristics that I put here are only for groups that try or establish some governance regime. So, and here we have a couple of examples here. The motives varies a lot. For instance, the PCC in São Paulo, basically, we can see that they develop a governance system in São Paulo's periphery to not try to call the police attention, to seek some level of legitimacy. And on the other hand, the militias in Rio, basically, a governance regime for them is a business. As a business of extortion. So the motives are very different here, are not the same. But once a criminal organization established in a territory, and is always a poor neighborhood, poor place in an equal country, they enforce this type of characteristics. The second one is based on what I can say is a new generation of Chicago School of Sociology. And what matters here is when the community took the main role here. And what matters here, according to the authors, is high density of social ties, high level of social cohesion, share expectations about violence control. We can find a couple of examples in indigenous communities in Mexico, some neighborhoods in Chicago and Stockholm. Also, there is a huge debate if those types of mechanisms works in Latin America's peripheries. But I'm not going into that, but I just want to address that this is a huge debate. And I also find kind of like a hybrid regime where in the same space, criminal organizations and community organizations share the governance of violent roles. The examples are not too many. I just find 2 papers, both in Rio and in areas ruled by drug traffic organization, not by the militias. And the main characteristics of this regime is a permanent negotiation between criminal actors and community agents. So let's move on. So now I'm getting to my empirical research and the regime that I will try to characterize here. When I get into the community, my first assignment it was to understand how the locals evaluate the state governance of violence. So my goal in that moment was to understand if they call the police when they felt threat, if they seek the justice to mediate conflicts, to find rights, and so on. So I tried to understand first the relationship with the state governance of violence, and wasn't surprised that the locals don't trust in the police. I did a paper only about this, but they don't trust in the police. But I was even surprised because I realized that the police not only has a poor evaluation, a very bad evaluation, but the police there disturbs the environment, create tensions among locals. And the justice wasn't my focus there because I was trying to understand the role of the police because the police is there all the time, almost 24/7. So I think the police is the state institution where the locals has the most contact and the most know how to evaluate because they deal with the police all the time. So that's why the police was my focus and not the justice. But the justice appear as a punitive institution and not as an instance to seek rights. And then based on that previous slide, I went to see if there is or a community arrangement of governance or a criminal. So I went to investigate the local community, the local institutions, and I realized that the whole debate there, the whole agenda is monopolized by the housing issue because the city is built like 600 apartments, like an American project in a piece of land near the community. So the main community actors there and the main community institutions are focused now to give the locals the priority in those apartments. So every meeting that I attended while I was there was about this issue. Wasn't about violence, wasn't about level of criminality, not like this. So I realized that there wasn't no community arrangement of governance. And then I went to see if there is a criminal arrangement of governance there, of violence. And then this is what me surprised the most, because when I got there in 2018, there wasn't any gang ruling the local drug market. There wasn't any kind of criminal structure acting there. I remember that back in 2018, I characterized the local drug market almost, I don't remember exactly the words, but almost as a zone of free trade zone where everyone can sell. There's no hierarchy, no use of force. But when I come back 2000, 22, things changed a lot. And the first thing that I realized now is there's a gang there, control the drug market. And then my thought was, hey, these guys might be doing some governance of violence here. And for my surprise, this local gang that controls the drug market there restricts the action only to the governance of the drug market. I don't know if this is permanent or is just part of a period of transition, but this is what there is now. So my question is still on. So if they don't trust in the state institutions, there isn't any criminal structure or communitary. So what then? I must confess that I start to draft an analysis, characterize this as a period of transition, that maybe when this whole housing issue is over, the communitary institutions one day will try to shift their attention to the violence, or maybe this gang one day could assume some governance functions. I was almost going to this direction, characterized as a period of transition, but then one thing happened to me, with something which is very contingent, part of social research, that I got in touch with the work of Martin Sanchez-Jankowski. Especially this is his book released in 2008, I guess. The name is something like, I'm terrible with names, is something like Cracks in the Pavements, right? So basically the book is about, he presents a social theory about the social dynamic in poor neighborhoods. And he presents this figure, the caretaker. And for him, the caretaker is in his theory, the caretaker is a characteristic figure of poor neighborhoods. They act as institution guidance system by welcome, integrating, regulating, and assisting those admitted into their social setting. So the caretakers, they enforce norms, disseminating information about rules, manage conflicts, and it's important to address that in Martin Jankowski's theory, the caretakers are not only about violence. There are caretakers on health, education, social work. There's a wild bunch of caretakers in a poor neighborhood. My focus here are on caretakers of violence. So basically, who are the caretakers? So when I get in touch with this definition, I was able to give some kind of interpretation and analysis to a bunch of settings, a bunch of situations that I was able to testify since 2018, but I didn't have the theoretical tools to analyze it. And then I start to analyze those actions as the system of governance that there is in that community. So basically, who are the caretakers of violence there? I was able to find those four men here. Here are some characteristics. Again, all names are fake here. As you can see, the first three guys, they have they are part of the same network. They have the same occupation, work with art, music. The fourth one is a bit different. He's older than the others. He has different position there, but despite those differences, they all act the same way with the same goal, as I'll show here. So basically, just to summarize, who are those caretakers? They are long residents who, when I start to ask them, when did this start in your life? Basically, they all provide the same type of answer. That is, they start this role mediating disputes between relatives, friends, neighborhoods, and gradually this became an asset for them. They start to get praise in the community, and they show some successful case of deterring the use of force. So what are the main characteristics of that those guys have, in my opinion? First, they have a close temporal connection with the place. Okay, but many people there have. So why this is important? Because this factor makes them deeply aware of the violence dynamics in the community, which is very specific. It's a very explosive type of dynamic. where a set of iterations can become violent in just a second. So the violence there sometimes is spread pretty fast, and they know really well read the situation. So this is a huge asset for them. And this is what makes them special in terms of regulating the use of force and thinking as a system of governance of violence. Just for instance, me and Professor Hatton, we did a presentation based on a case that happened there, just to you guys just to understand what I'm talking about. It was a case that started in a football match and a soccer match. Two guys for different teams start to arguing, and then these things keep going after the match. And I don't know, I don't remember if it was 1 week later, 2 weeks later, 5 people were dead because of this argument that started in a soccer match, just to illustrate how explosive sometimes things can get there when it's about violence. And also they have this kind of flawless trajectory that basically is disassociates from certain stigmas like crack consumption, collaborative policies, and corrupt politics. So basically, this is what makes them special, and those are the capitals that they hold when they trying to interfere in a situation, establish some guidance about violence. So as I was saying, the main challenge for them is the high level of unpredictability into which a violent conflict can roll that. And I find a pattern how they act. In the paper, there's a bunch of episodes that I'll not get into this. I can come back if there is any question about it. But the pattern is that usually residents come to them to talk about situations that can turn into violent episodes. So the residents often come to them and say, hey, there is something there that I think can become really violent. Can you go there? Convince these guys not to use not to use violence. Some like this, people come to them and ask for them to help. In certain situations, they act by themselves, try to prevent the use of violence. And sometimes they try to mitigate the damage in situations where the use of violence already happened. So basically, that's the pattern of how they act. But they don't act in every case, in every situation. So they do not accept mediate all the conflicts, all the demands that comes to them. When does this occur? Basically, in three situations. When they don't know any of those involved, or they have any connection with relatives and so on. In cases which they don't know any, it's repeated here, sorry. In cases involve people in the past who have not respected the agreements that they made, and also in situations where they do not believe that their efforts will be useful. So basically, they not mediate all the situations that come to them. So just to finish, why I think maybe this system here of governance doesn't fit in those three systems that I just showed in that table. Why? And here is just some specificities of this regime. First, there is no punishment for those who not decided to follow caretaker's recommendation. They don't use violence, not even as a threat. That's the main difference between these arrangements and criminal arrangements, for instance. The caretaker enforcement is a result of their power of persuasion and the knowledge about the dynamics of conflict. So basically, I think it's a rhetorical job. It's power of persuasion. And what are the limits of this? If you're thinking even as a policy to reduce homicide or violent episodes, despite the fact that they know pretty well the violent dynamic of the community, they can follow the case because there are too many cases. So the cases of violence episodes are too much for them to follow. And this is not the main occupation of their lives. So it's almost a freelance job. They have their lives. For instance, two of the four guys that I just showed here last year, they spent 3 months in Europe working. So they wasn't there in the community during 3 months. So it's not the main occupation in their life. So that's the main limits of this regime, because it's not permanent. And I think it's this. Let me know if you have some questions. Thank you so much.
We'll continue with the presentation of Barbara. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for this moment, to discuss our works, our papers. And I would like to thank Professor Veloso and Professor Dodlan for making this happen, because for us it's an important time to think about what we are trying to build, And my paper talks about virado. I don't know if everybody knows, but I'll try to describe it, And the uses and social representations in Recife, okay? And just to characterize, cocaine, it's something that comes before virado. So it's why I put some data here just to address, because South America has a big consumption, in this kind of substance. And Brazil, it's the largest market of cocaine in South America. So it's interesting to understand that these kind of products are so available in this place. So in Brazil, what we can find at the streets, we can find the most famous, or the most common products are pedra, that we can call the crack stone, the crack rock, and crack cocaine. It's what we call the powder one in the form, and virado, that is this third substance that we can find in Recife, okay? And these versions are, like I said, a result of a preparation of coca plant, So what's the virado specifically? Virado, we can describe it like a common product in Recife, that's the city that I'm talking about, and it's the resulting from making the crack stone into powder and adding boric acid or some flu medicine, and then instead of smoking, people snort it, okay? So it's a change of using that kind of product. And there is something interesting that I think you need to know. It's about price, because if we look at powder cocaine there, a gram, could be purchased at the street from 40 reais to 120. So it can vary a lot. If we look at the crack stone, it's something that is more established, because we can buy it for almost 10 reais. It's almost half Canadian dollar. If we can put this into Canadian money. And virado is something interesting because the price also varies. It could be found from 30, maybe 20, but it's not the most common in the interviews, to 40 reais. Okay, so the prices are not well established. There is something that we can understand, like how the market works and how people can get this substance and has a space to bargain, and people don't know exactly. The prices could change by the disposition, the availability and things like that. So the final cost, it's something that we can think, because when we look at this data, we can think that crack is the most cheap drug available in Recife, if we can look at this. But the consumption, how people use it, is different. And so the final amount that people spend in this kind of substance could be a big amount in the end, because people sometimes smoke 10 rocks in a day or 30. So it's not a cheap use, okay? And it's a bit different from powder cocaine and virado because it's something that takes more time to be available in the body to feel the effect. So it's something like crack. You can smoke it into 10 seconds. It's in your brain and you are feeling the rush, yeah? And powder cocaine and virado, it takes like 10 minutes. It's something that takes more time, and it's not it's not the same. Yeah, we can think about crack something fast, and the other two, they can vary because depending on the concentration of cocaine in each substance, but it's something like that. So okay.
Just a second, I just realized that we're still sharing the screen.
My lord.
Just stop the share screen.
Yeah, that's it.
Share again, but your presentation.
Okay. Now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just like the catch up. Sorry.
It's okay?
Yeah.
So, my research, my paper talks about these substances because there are no many data that describing how people use it because something local, but I think it's interesting to think sociologically about what's consumption and how it happens, okay? And so the main objective is to document these social representations of virado, because if we look back to what's crack and what's cocaine, it's something that people know better, and people has almost an established social representation that could vary. But about virado, people doesn't know it well. People know the substance, but sometimes people don't think so much about it. Yeah, and the research question is just how it's socially represented in each city. So, sorry. To understand social representations, I'll take a Bourdieusian or Baudelarian or structural constructivism, yeah, because to understand how we can access how people represent things, and I'm trying to understand this kind of substance. So the idea of social representation comes from this field, yeah, and to get the information, to access data, my methodology basically was a qualitative research, because it was not easy to get in touch with people that were able to talk about their uses, because all of these substances are illegal. So they feel like they don't want to make proofs against themselves. So my strategy was to go to some specific actors, yeah, from different places of the city, because I want to understand it in consumers' perspective. So I tried to find people that use all of the substance that was like products of the coca leaf, the crack, the cocaine, the powder cocaine, and the virado, and make them talk about virado, yeah, to understand how they think, what they think about this substance. So my data collection occurred between March and September of 22, and the interviews took place in online sites, yeah, in online meetings, and in person, because sometimes people thought that it would be dangerous to go to the place and talk to me face by face, and sometimes they think that it could be dangerous to talk online. So I let people choose what were the best space to talk about. So I did semi-structured interviews, and I got 17 interviews that I could record, yeah, because I always asked people to record, and after that to make my analysis. And like I said, I choose different profiles. That was stratified selection, because if I go just into the snowball through one person, I'll just have one perspective like this. And I try to understand people from all of the metropolitan region, maybe from 17 interviews, I started the chain like 8 or more, into 8 or 10. I talked to the person, and the person gave me someone, and the second person of the chain was someone that was available to talk to me. So I try to diversify it, just to understand that it's not something like one specific profile. And my analytical frame, it's something that I'm building and trying to think more about it, because I use the perspective of self, that is the social version of the actor, how they evaluate things, how they put themselves into public spaces, groups, and this perspective, and understand how they judge the behaviors and the actions and all of this. So Taylor tries to give us a perspective from a historical morality, how people lead with reality and society. And the two elements that for me were the most was stigma, that it's a concept from Goffman, to understand how people are trying to deal with this, because they are users from illegal substance, so they have a stigma, and what are the stigmas between them, okay? And distinction, it's a concept that also helps me to think about what we'll see in the next quotes, okay? So I'll pass to my results and discussion. And I just took some quotes that I think that was interesting. And the first one, it's a person that talks about what they uses, and she tells that she doesn't use virado, but if it was the last option in their group, we would use it. So it's not something that is avoided, but because when they talk about crack, it's something that they'll never try. And virado, they say that if it's the last option, it's an option, okay? So it's interesting to understand how people avoid and accept some substance, how like crack. Who doesn't use crack? That we can place them in a middle class or low middle class. If they don't use crack, because it's not common to, the reason is that I didn't accept it someone that uses crack in middle class, but I know by a lot of interviews that there are a lot of people using it, but people don't want to talk to me. So I had to lead with this, using this kind of quotes, okay? The second one, it's they describe what they think about cocaine, powder cocaine, about crack, and about virado. And Playboy likes cocaine. This is the most representation, the most association that people do when people think about powder cocaine. But when the person talks about virado, he tried, because for him it's something so close to crack, and he describes it like it has certain traits that resemble who smokes crack because of the effects. Because for him, using something pure is important because we can feel it better, it's clean. And when he talks about virado, it's something dirty and makes people almost like who smokes crack. He described it, the effects in their nose, the mouth, the eyes, like it's something so close. And for me, this is interesting to understand, because it's another perspective. The other, she was talking about their consumption. She's a powder cocaine user, and she lives in a poor neighborhood, but she accesses a lot of classes. So she's not restricted to that experience. And she said that in their place where she lives, that's a poor neighbor, they always try to buy cocaine. If they have a party, they buy cocaine, powder cocaine. But sometimes when the cocaine is over, they just buy virado. because it's close and it's cheaper. But for her, this is a problem because when they go to Virado, she doesn't use it. So she has a strict line that divides who uses Virado and her. Yeah, and for me this was interesting because they say I don't use Virado. People that use people that use crack says that they don't use crack. People that say that uses Virado say that it's not crack. So they establish this difference. No. And I usually ask people, do you go buy the stone to use Virado? And people say, yes, I go there to buy, but I don't use crack. And this for me was emblematic, yeah, because if we change the form of consumption, the substance could be changed and the social representations could be changed. And for these people that I interviewed, the way that they deal with the substance make them different. So it's the reason that I use some perspectives of self and identity to understand how people are building this picture about Virado. Yeah. And the other, it's a man that says that he gave the money, but he doesn't go there to the place to buy the rock because he uses Virado. He never smoked crack and he'll never smoke crack. But if he wants Virado and there's no Virado available, because people can do it easily. Yeah, people can buy the rock, smash it, and put the medicine, the boric acid. It's something like a handcraft substance that people can do it easily. So for him, if he want to use it, he give the money, but he will not go into that street because the neighborhoods could see him. And he tells this, that the way that people see who goes to that street, that is the place to buy Virado, because in Recife, if we look at the markets, we can see that Virado is something placed, yeah? We have some special places that people can go there to buy the substance. And in middle class, the markets are a bit different because you can call and someone will deliver it to you. You can go there, but the most common, it's like delivery, yeah? You have a dealer and you receive it in your house, in your apartment, and it's another way of thinking about drug markets when we talk about middle class. So this was something interesting. Yeah, and the last one, I think I put 5 and 4. The person says that I used it to use cocaine, but when I started buying, so price is something that could make people use it, yeah? I already bought the Virado that is already mixed because it gets cheaper. Because she describes that her experience with pure cocaine were in parties of people who had a lot of money, and she describes some jobs, yeah, that were respectful jobs. And when she needed to buy the substance for her own use, she decided to buy Virado. And she tells that she'll never smoke crack because it's dangerous, because she knows someone that smoked it and now it's at the street, a boy that studied with her. So the way that people are building the social representation of this substance is interesting for me. And my findings that I accept suggestions, it's that what we can see is a management of social costs of use, because people take some time the economic cost to define, because the expensive ones are from the rich, the cheap ones are from the poor neighbors or someone that doesn't have enough money to buy cocaine, because we have the glamorization of cocaine. Yeah, if we think into this group, okay? Because if we think cocaine out of this group, we will have another kind of social representation that it's where I come from my master's degree. Okay, my thesis from the master that talks about synthetic drugs. And it's another way that people think about it. And who are users there think that cocaine is glamorized and it's time to party and always this kind of representations. Crack, it's always a way of escaping reality and deterioration. It's something that's like the evil drug, yeah, that we have books and virado stays in a gray zone, yeah, depends on of who uses. If someone that is middle class, it's okay, it's no problem, it's not so dangerous. They can manage the way that they represent this substance. But it's someone, if it's in the neighborhood, so no, it's close to crack, it's crack. So the way that people manage this matters who uses it. And that's the reason I try to understand this by a class perspective, okay? Because like Ricardo described, Recife is a very unequal city. Yeah, we can know people from different neighbors and they have different lifestyles, and we can get into Bourdieu to explain this kind of thing. And for the main thing is that virado, it's not crack and it's not cocaine, and something that we are trying to describe in this paper. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much, and I'm available for questions.
Yeah, you can stay or move around. So, well, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, with the volume, I'll probably move around.
Yeah, too many cameras and too many mics. So thank you, Barbara. We'll move with the discussion. I have already a couple of questions, but we'll start with Jean. Do you wanna come in the front? You know, and I can direct probably the camera to you. You can.
Okay. Can you hear me? Is that, yes? Okay. I don't need to be seen, or it's,
Yes.
okay. Okay, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you. I think this is extremely original and interesting.
can like powers against him in some situations. So it's a very complex and sometimes contradicted set of interactions.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to some questions to Barbara. Again, extremely interesting. One thing I was wondering, maybe I missed it, but you discussed how cocaine users see Virado users, how Virado users see themselves and cocaine users. How do crack users see Virado users? Do they see them as would-be playboys, as people trying to distinguish themselves from them, or as people who are able in a way to control their use, or how are they seen?
Crack user, oh, sorry, it's something, it's part of this situation that it's very interesting because they believe in the social representations that are made about crack. The ones that I talked, crack, it destroyed their lives. So when I think about Virado, it's something most of them tell that they won't use it because it's another drug for them. It's another drug, and they don't want to have more problems with drugs. But when they describe the users, they always tell that people who consume Virado uses it in parties just to show. Yeah, it's like a performative consumption. It's different from crack because they tell that crack something that made their lives a flip. Yeah, that changed a lot. And when they talk about Virado, they don't put these users in the same situation of them. So they also make this distinction. Yeah. And for them, it's a different substance because I had a person that told me that she lost her house. She did everything. The first substance that she used was crack, and she doesn't want any other. So when she talked about Virado, she had the opportunity, but she doesn't have interest because she likes crack. Crack is something that makes her feel like a lot of adrenaline, and Virado doesn't make this. So the effects matter, okay, in this distinction. The others think that Virado is a little bit expensive than crack, so they prefer crack to use crack. Because of the effects, who uses crack doesn't wanna use another thing because crack is the most. People say that crack it's anything that could be compared. Okay, so the other substances are not interesting, but when they talk to others about this, it's not like the playboys, because when they talk about crack, they say that the playboys also go to poor neighbors to buy something. And when they talk to playboys, they say that there are playboys that use crack. So for them, it's a harmful drug. Yeah. But it's not only in poor neighbors. Hey, they always get people from other classes to say that crack is not something that only happens here. In Virado, it's something that they don't wanna use it, but they think that it's something performative. Yeah, I think I repeated just to make sense.
But the Playboy is also performative. It's consumption of consumption.
Cocaine, it's something very performative when people describe uses.
Yeah, so it's
put in the
different.
table and everybody uses.
But crack is not performative.
For them, no. For them, it's something about how they feel, in the power that they feel, because people that I got in touch, they are not living in regular situations. They are homeless and they had troubles with this. And this was I think I interviewed 5. Yeah, 3, they didn't want to record the interview. So it was something that I can't use it so much, but they are living in a situation very specific. Yeah. And when they talk about Virado, one of them liked to use Virado, but will never use crack and lives in the same neighbor. So it's really tied. Yeah. Okay. One of other, and it's close. When crack users talk about Virado, it's more close to people that perform using than people that use it just to feel the effects. Okay.
Okay. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
can I just quick follow up into that? Well, first, the green stuff in front of Barbara is not what you think
Yeah.
you are. It's just
No
mate.
problem, but
For those who are watching this online, I know these things are legal in Canada, but it's legal.
yeah.
Uh,
Could be, yeah.
but that one came from Argentina, so it will not be that legal. So my question is that, you know, you are always mentioning also the consumption of cocaine by snoring. So, you know, I was holding this question, but then when we start discussing about the Playboy thing and so on, and I was, you know, also wondering that the form of consumption of cocaine, if you're injecting cocaine, the perception more likely is going to be different as well, or they still see this as a fancy consumption of a drug, a more recreative side of the drug rather than you know, kind of addiction or something like that.
Mhm. Okay, when people talk about cocaine, they talk most about snorting cocaine. In Recife, it's not common to see people injecting drugs. I think it's a particular thing that we need to talk, yeah? Because the most that they say, because they put into drinks, but it's not the most common to make people think about it like something different from others. It's just an alternative to have fun, but it's not the most common. Okay, and injecting drugs it's something that we didn't address there so much, even when we talk about cocaine products or coca products, yeah. But I think that if we talk about injecting, it's something worse than maybe cocaine snorting, and yeah, it's something aggressive, and people are really impressed about what happens in television and what happens in other countries, so they prefer to smoke or drink sometimes, but it's not the most common, and they don't make difference about consumption. Yeah, I never talked to anybody that said that they like to inject cocaine. People like to use cola. How can I say that? Like stick, no.
Industrial glue.
Yeah, glue. Yeah, industrial glue. That's very powerful, and it's something interesting, but it's not from this type of. Yeah, it's like an adventure for people that like to try, but they don't see themselves, even in middle class, that they are glue users. Yeah.
One after that, I'll let you jump in, but you mentioned that perception of Virado really had to do with the users, and that it appears to be mostly structured by class, not about gender. Because just to give you a point, I remember, and Raton, if he's listening, will remember that even when we were doing interviews about the class about marketing, we met people, especially males, who were cocaine users. And we met males who were cocaine users, and we asked them if their partner was using, and they would say yes with cannabis, but cocaine I do it on the side. Okay, so there appeared to be some kind of gendered dimension to the consumption. Did you find that in the case of Virado, whether consumption or perception?
Yeah, if we think about this kind of drug uses, we can look at by the gender lens. Yeah, it's not something that I addressed in this work, but I had some special interviews that talk about how women's managed uses different from men's. So the examples how even crack users, even Virado users, they are different because it's like women has a lot of things, yeah, to matter, the house, the children, and this makes them choose the better ways of using some substance. So the men's, they were free to do what they want, to try what they want, to lose control sometimes, to use it and pass and expend more money. And this was something very present, yeah, in the speeches, in the interviews. I had an example that a woman that she used it, and after she began to sell it, but not just sell it, she was having it at home because she knew how to deal with the substance so close. And her husband doesn't know, because he took a part of the quantity and used it in a day and made a lot of trouble. And the owner of that place came there and destroyed the house and put the gun on. So it's different how women and men deal with this kind of substance. And cocaine, what I heard is that men use it even more than women. Yeah, and it's different in parties. It's like men could use it for a night or 2 days, and we have most of the examples that people talking about who lose it control using it and have health problems were men. Okay, and women, we in these interviews I didn't heard about. It's like women knows how to manage it better, and sometimes they use it hidden. Yeah,
Okay.
the women doesn't show to everybody.
Okay.
And one of the examples is that a woman says it's easier to get this substance because I am a woman, and people give me. And when she started buying, she preferred Virado because it was cheaper. It's that example. Because the gender matters in these uses. Yeah.
And how about in perception?
Perception is not so different. When they talk about examples, they address the examples to someone specific.
No, but when you say, for instance, Playboy, okay, cocaine consumption is associated with Playboys.
Yeah, it's almost
that's a
men.
gender. Yes.
Yeah, it's almost men when people talk about cocaine because it's what is shown. Yeah, it's the one that puts in the table. It's almost men, and the women are some the people that uses by the other someone that offered it.
So it's not the same performative.
Yeah, it's different.
gain
Yeah.
at all. Okay. Okay. I'll leave it. I'll let you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I had other order of question, but I'm jumping to this discussion because probably make more sense, because I find like both presentations like fascinating, and from someone forcing himself to look into this from Canada, recent experience of legalizing recreational cannabis, and the background discussion and pilot projects in decriminalizing possession that we're having in the Vancouver area, and other things. So I was reading and listening your presentations anchor on that, and it's quite interesting on how you see the recreation side of the drug as something marking quite sharply the distinctions, if I'm getting from Bourdieu point of view. So it's really something. The recreation is something finding and defining these distinctions in social spaces and so on and so on and so on, and which we link to representations, and then you can unfold to stigmas, and but then like the gender question Jean asked always will add an additional layer of complexity on this, and I think this was not that clear on your presentation. It may be worth exploring further on your research on how buying the cocaine is part of the recreation for playboys. So the recreation of the consumption of cocaine is not only the use, is buying and sharing with women, right? And then it will also probably help you figuring out the social construction of of taste, to go really back to Bourdieu. So like linking to that, this the question similar to what Jean Red asked, but like in other terms. So, why think in terms of social classes? Because it seems to me that you can clearly go full stream Bourdieu on that and say, well, it's not a class issue. There are other forms of capital involved. It's about specific social space and taste, which also include this gender side of it, on how middle-class men are going to buy the product, and they consume or not, but part of the ritual of consumption is sharing with women to gather, whatever benefits they think related to that. But then it's not economical in terms of economic capital anymore. Like you may be analyzing these tastes and these distinctions, and how stigma will play in one sense of the other in a way more nuanced way. So how do you address that, to really think through social class? So I'm asking the same question on social class, but like pushing more toward Bourdieu already.
Yeah, I think I started by class, but I can find race like something very important to understand how people see the users and substance. And because we have, like, if we look at by the police and how they act through this kind of substance, they will see that cocaine is not a problem, but they go to look for it, but it's not a big problem. The big problem is crack, because it's more available. It's easier for police to get people at the street. So could be by race, could be by gender. I think that this is another way of looking at this. Yeah, it's like I choose a class, but I can talk about a lot of things by these examples. And I think that this economic classification in Recife matters, because the first thing that people say when they talk about this substance, it's the substance from rich and the substance for poor people. So it's the way that I enter in this topic, yeah, but it's not something limited by class. It's the common sense that I try to test, and I'll get there using Bourdieu, because it's not some only the economic capital, it's social capital, it's cultural capital, it's how people put these substances in their lives, how they manage the representations into family. Because if we talk about cocaine users, we can find that people use cocaine to work because they need to be more productive, they need to be more alert. It's an stimulant substance, so they have another use of the substance. It's not something only to have party, to party, and it's something that makes them more productive. So this is another discussion about productivity and how we can manage it. But I enter by class, economic class, trying to follow the common sense, but it's not limited to that. And I think I need more space to bring the examples, because there were so many examples about people who had, when we think about recreational use and problematic use, it's another way of people thinking about that. And if I'm looking just like about the recreational use and the social representations, but if we look at the problems, we'll see like a scale, that we go, you enter in cocaine, sometimes when you lose the money, you go to virar, but this doesn't happen necessarily in reality. It's something that we can understand by a discourse that is built by media and the politicians, and how people feed the social representation. I don't know if I answered you, but it was just a strategy. It's not limited to class, even in Recife, that it's something that the color of the skin matters so much for police.
Oh yeah, it's definitely answer. I think like at some point you've been you may end up doing something more intersectional because it's going to pop in your data, and it's your problem. It's a supervisor. So, so I have other questions, but I will first ask questions to Ricardo and then open for questions here in the room and online. So for Ricardo, I think it's interesting how you're grouping the literature and analyzing this, but this may be my bias, on how I take these issues, but you're definitely, getting the literature in a kind of criminology, sociology of deviance, sociology of crime, but that is quite often a sub-area of sociology or a kind of field of studies that is true to link sometimes with sociology of violence more than sociology of law or social legal studies, which may not provide you the best picture of the literature, because, like, for instance, if you go back to just looking to a regulatory beyond state actors, state law, like the community base, you may go back to Boaventura, or even go back further with Foot White, or some work on legal pluralism in anthropology of law. So there are some areas that are looking into this, how legal orders operates beyond state law, that may be more anchored in anthropology of law and sociology of law, but they're dealing with similar things. Like, for instance, it's a classic reference here in Canada because it's probably one of the most famous Canadian sociologists, after Goffman. Guy Rocher, he has some work on legal orders, and one of the many categories that he used he basically explained, the need of not addressing law only in a very normative and state-based way to study law, but to study law, how law operates in action. So he makes a distinction between law in the books, and not necessarily law in action, but he says like living law. And in this sense, like it may go to different areas of legal pluralism, or even within state law. Like he would suggest that, the way we mobilize a particular area of law here in Ottawa will not necessarily be the same way we do this in Montreal, in Toronto, because institutions will shape, roles of actors are going to change, and basically the living version of like criminal law will be different in one city to the other, this kind of stuff. And one of the categories he used to describe the many legal orders he's trying to classify is marginal legal orders. So well, criminal settings, illegal markets, they also have a regulatory role, changing behavior and so on. So like first part of the question is that, okay, like, how do you see this kind of hidden literature? And I'm not saying that you should include that. I'm just saying that, there are many stuff looking on how illegal markets, informal, indigenous communities, depending on what kind of context you're analyzing, they regulate a whole bunch of things. And sometimes this create quite interesting context to analyze. Like, for instance, you may frame, well, you may have an exemption from the drug enforcement agencies in US to import ayahuasca, because there is a Santo Daime church, whatever place in US, and you can like basically import drugs. And the same thing with peyote. So you have like this very crazy situations in which even a state will allow somehow, and again, like it's not a governance of violence, but it mixes way more with religion and other stuff. But the same thing, you may do this exactly the same aspect, but like from a more sociology of law angle. But like then there is an issue that I think Jean already pointed to, is this idea of coercion or sanction, because that's probably the glitch on when dealing with this kind of phenomenon as a particular legal order, because law, state-based or not, will have some kind of sanctioning capacity, coercion capacity. And when we're dealing with caretakers, this is not very clear if it exists or not. On sanction on the punitive side, I sometimes you know, if I'm using the three categories, criminal regimes, community, and hybrid, so obviously the sanctioning capacity in enforcing like laws, let's say, on the criminal side is, you know, use of violence on levels that we in theory should not use in state law, even if, you know, we use it a lot in Brazil, we can say, and the community recognize that. But like when it moves to the community, then sanctioning may be different things. And I'm not, and I'm really not sure if this kind of approach may help you nuancing certain the sanctioning or the coercion aspect of the caretakers, because, you know, it may argue that the sanctioning capacity in indigenous communities are not at all related to use of violence and sometimes even normative coercion, but deals with respect of certain actors, honoring and like not being in a bad situation, not being in synchrony with the community. So like you may find some legal pluralist stuff that will more likely suggest that what is going on with the caretakers is, you know, some level of sanctioning. And like, you know, you can still do that even with criminology. If you go back to Becker, the basics on the outsider, like really the first example is pretty much like this kind of stuff, you know, what happened in he used like a Malinovsky example, and what the kind of sanctioning and how societies without a state necessarily will govern things and deal with conflict. So you may have some options there for interest, but this kind of reaction I was really thinking as I hearing this is probably very confused, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to edit the comment and to put in a current way, but it's really like pointing to and sharing, you know, these other perspectives that you may enrich even more the kind of systematization of studies you're already doing.
So thank you so much for the comments, Professor. I think biggest part of your first comment I'll take as a recommendation, right? Because I'm not doing this dialogue with legal studies. Just to summarize a bit the literature that I'm using here. I think in the thesis, as I'll discuss with Jen, I'll have much more room for trying to integrate this kind of different aspects of literature, as you so well put here. Here I try to categorize papers that analyze systems, that what I understand as a systems, right? So we have some of them Brazilian sociologists of crime, of violence. We also have anthropologists, political sciences, especially here in the United States, like Benjamin Lassen, David Scarbuck. But basically, especially this new literature, this recent literature about criminal governance, as I was discussing with Jan, they are like tackle of this Weber interpretation, especially in the South globe, that they states, this Weber interpretation, that the state seeks to gain the monopoly of violence. That is a perception from Europe, United States, like they are showing, hey, this is not what the state wants here. So let's change the paradigm here and try to understand the states in another way, not only as an instance that try to gain the monopoly of force, because it's not what's going on here. Because some states doesn't have the capacity to do it, and some others, like Brazil, maybe has the capacity but won't enforce it. So why is that happen? So it's just to clarify a bit what this literature is special about criminal governance are trying to do, and the governance about community. It's if you talk to Samson and his colleagues, they don't even talk about governance at all. I think they don't see themselves as researchers about governance. They talk about collective efficacy or communitary regimes, but in the end, it fits into my definition because the neighborhoods arrangements they are trying to analyze, in the end, seeks the control of violence. And so basically this is it in terms of my literature, and I will try to explore in my thesis for sure this law studies in terms of coercion provided by the caretakers. As I say, now thinking I'm towards to analyze the coercion as symbolic. But I think that if you think as a system, the type of coercion that they provide is the biggest flaw of this system, you know, because they are not violent actor. They are not use violence to emphasize, because they are not see this as a resource to solve things, settle disputes there. But still, you can say, but there is no punishment. Maybe there's not a system, but what drives me to categorize this as a system is because they seek to regulate the use of power and the use of violence in certain situations. So they are much more successful in regulate the use of power than the punitive side of the system of governance. So if you think that maybe it's this, so it's a system that its biggest flaw is how they punish. I don't say that they should go violent, not at all, but to this, if you think about the capacity of this system, even as police to reduce homicide, they should involve the community in something more like collective effort to, like you can see in neighborhoods in Chicago and all these American sociologists are trying to show increased mechanisms of collective efficacy, the density of social ties. I think if they do that, maybe they will have a type of coercion that are not violent, that are much more symbolic and much more effective, if you think in terms of avoid the use of violence in that community. I think, I don't know if I answer your question, but I think it's this.
A bit, and I think it's just a quick follow-up. And again, it's not to put you in any trouble, it's just a curiosity. Do you see any overlapping with religion or any kind of other forms of authority, status, recognition from the community regarding the caretakers. So are they on, like, community organizers? Are they on, a religious figure in the community, or how do are they have if you would, like, if I'm forcing you to attach a capital to this figure, it's someone like carrying like relational capital, political capital, economic, criminal capital. So how do you, or maybe everything, maybe different depending on the context, but it's what is the glitch,
Yeah, I mean, I think the perception, they are not religious actors at all. They're outside of this, but we can deny that now the evangelical churches, especially in Brazilian's urban periphery, has the biggest influences, and they have a huge presence there, and this community is not different. But I think the vision of the religious actors for the community is the same of the police. They see the caretakers as a problem because especially because they have this racial profile, and most of them are artists, blacks that has tattoos, and that have a different profile. So basically they see them as an enemy. So there isn't a zone of dialogue between, because those kind of actors now are very, very conservative and take into consideration the political moment. They see those guys at the other side, as the part of the left that wants to destroy the schools, they represent this for their religions, right? So I was able to find any kind of dialogue between those caretakers and the religion. So, but the Afro movement like this? Yes, definitely yes. Oh no, I didn't address this because no. I can answer this because that
can open the mic, and you can leave it open. I think it's.
I was just wondering. You've talked about evangelical, and I asked about Afro-Brazilian religions.
Most of them follow those Afro religions, but they doesn't have enough quantity to provide a community system and then to influence the way things are, the way they govern the violence. So, but regardless to the evangelical thing, they see basically as the police. Has basically the same vision. They are enemies. They are not allies to reduce the violence here. Sorry.
Like just sharing the kind of quite interesting massing problem you have. Like if you would go like full scale in a legal pluralistic approach on how these regulations are occurring, you have like some level of interaction of this legal order with state law and state agencies, but you would probably have to segment, non-state-based legal orders within some of these neighborhoods, because you have a certain competition among like different pluralistic legal orders at the same time. So it's not like going back to Boaventura and say like the law in Passaga, about like Favela da Maré, and so it's one thing. Like it would be, no, it's not one thing. Like at the same time, they are the caretakers, they are religious group enforcing some things, they are criminal groups, and you have like I would not, it's you may name this as a hybrid thing, and I would not even see this as a hybrid, but a really multi-layer thing. So, and this is something that you can even explore with the current distinctions you're making, because it's, the caretakers is not, it may be somehow hegemonic or not in that context, but you may have like you still have community based, not caretakers. You still may have like religious based, you still may have like criminal based, and it's not that they are merging or mixing, they are competing in this field.
Questions from outside?
Yeah, I ask on so online there is a delay of 30 seconds, so I'm still like doing this, but I already asked in the chat. We still have like 7 people. We were at 15 at some point, but I'm waiting for them. But I can share already the mic for those here. Any questions? So just open the mic.
Well, I have some questions. I'd like to address them in Portuguese, but I keep
Well,
it in English.
You can maybe
No,
try.
it's okay. No, well, the first question is, it talks more to my own kind of interests that I would like to know. For instance, do you see the presence of other institutions related to law that are not the police or the, I don't know, the judiciary? I mean, I researched the public defender's office. It would be kind of in the, and other agents of state. For instance, now you have the Bolsa Familia and all this. So does this, is there anyone involved with organizing the community to have access to some external resources? And then it becomes a kind of a way of creating leaderships or caretakers, and does it translate into some kind of these capitals? But also, you mentioned the fact that the 3 of them worked with culture, with musicians and tattoo guys, etc. How does it impact? What's the contribution of this kind of work? What's the mechanism? Is there any correlation between the fact that they work with culture, with the fact that they are caretakers? And the last question, I had the question about the religious people too, but I don't know. Like caretakers, will they only take care of aspects related to managing violence, or do they also manage other aspects? They're also able to bring problems, issues of the community to the outside world.
Okay, can I go? Okay, excellent questions. Thank you so much. First of all, I mean, I thought was building my slides but I didn't. I decided to stay out. It's important to categorize the state here because it's not an absent state and it's not a failure state. The state's there, not only just as the police, are health agents, public schools, health stations, the state's there. So there are a lot of institutional actors there from different areas. It's not an absent state. The problem is the quality of the services, right? So the state is there, but when I do my research question, I was asking about the institutions that managed violence. So that's why my focus on the police, but definitely there's a lot of institutions there, schools, health stations, health agents, and so on. So definitely it's not an absent station, it's a place with a lot of different state institutions. And it's interesting because the cultural aspect of their work gave them, since they were young, a kind of like different approach. Like they were able to see that the stigmas around the community, that, that kind of like the system is against us, the police is against us. So this cultural background gives them like a different assets, different readings, access to cultural things, and that helps them to build a vision that they need to help to build a different kind of environment. So that's the relation that I can do between the cultural job and the action, they work as caretakers. Definitely there is a huge connection, because most of them, thanks to this work, they were able to visit other countries, other Brazilian cities, so and have dialogue with other community actors from other places, and they start to understand that the problem is not the drug, but how they enforce, and that as I show you, the place is near to the richest part of the city, so they trying to take out the natural setting of the things, you know. If the police work here this way, why 10 minutes from here they work completely different? So I think this cultural approach gave them tools to create a vision, a different vision for the community, right?
If you allow me, I think what you're describing is like, I read a lot of Gramsci.
Okay.
You're kind of describing kind of a organic intellectual of the land, something like that. Would you say it's kind of?
I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that because
Right.
I don't have familiarity with this category, but
Okay,
definitely
I was thinking
I'll
the
check
same
it out.
thing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you can go.
And the last, your last question is about, yeah, I mean, even in the Sancho Jankowski theory, he addressed that in a poor neighborhood, there is a different kinds of caretakers. So there is caretakers in the health issues, education, social things. So there's a wild bunch of caretakers because they are fundamental part of poor neighborhoods, according to this theory that I'm fully into this. So if you go to another areas, you can find women, you can find a lot of different profiles. But these guys, they only intervene when in violent situations, like they know how the bureaucracy works. So, hey, maybe if you need a public defender, so many of young men there have problems with law. So they, hey, let me see your situation here. Let me know if I can find you a pro bono lawyer. So let me know if I can. So they have this kind of influence that goes beyond this conflict management. So they are very important figures. But my point is, they do not represent a communitary institution. Like they are not part of the neighborhoods association. They are not part of the city council. They are for them. Like, you know, that's why I didn't categorize this as a communitary arrangement, you know, because they did not, hey, I'm talking about in the name of these communitary institutions, and they have a lot of disagreement with those institutions right now. So, but definitely the influence into the community boundaries go ways beyond the conflict and the violence management.
Other questions?
I was just wondering if you can share a little bit about your previous research on master degree, because I got a little bit curious, the difference between synthetic drugs and all the, I don't know, I think that maybe it's totally another universe, but also we can make some kind of relations, also maybe more address in terms of race, and I don't know, I'm just thinking a little bit about this. Okay. My master's, I try to describe how the middle class markets operate. Yeah. So I choose like MDMA. Yeah. There is sweet or dose. Yeah. Bala, and these two kind of substance, and understand how people buy it, for how much, and their connections. And what I found, and also it was a part of a big research from Professor Dodlan and Professor Hatton. It was that the middle class market, they operate by trust. You don't get into these chains without people knowing you well and putting you in contact with someone that also allowed the other person to pass the contact. So it's something really closed. Yeah, it's different from cracked markets that a playboy could go there and buy something, and the person that is close could go there and buy something, because it's placed, you know, where you can get this kind of substance. And it's almost this picture. Yeah, the middle class markets are closed, are covered. Yeah, the classifications that Professor Dodon and Professor Hatton did, it's that something that happens where people doesn't know. So police can't go there to operate and to find this kind of drugs, and because it's in the middle class apartments, it's in middle class parties, closed parties, it's not almost in public space. You are not vulnerable when you are using this substance. So we were talking about police and about violence, trying to build the understanding about it's not every market that is dangerous, every drug market that is dangerous. We are trying to understand this difference, because if you look about the class land, you can understand that we have big differences. And when you were thinking about race, and this kind of thing, in some interviews there, I noticed that when the police wants to go to look for this kind of thing, they go first in Black people, So people were telling that if they were at a rave, that the party that passes 3 days, people there, and when you have a stop by the police out of the party, the Black ones are the preferable targets. That's it. So we had this kind of difference, and when these substances were not something that people worried about using because it's something funny and doesn't make you addicted. These representations they are using everything, it's totally different. But the point is that when people talk about cocaine, they always change the way they talk about drugs. Because when they were talking about synthetic drugs, they were really empowered and happy, and it's something that it's people like, because I have good experience. I see the world, different colors. And when people talk about cocaine, but the way that they talk about this substance changes. So that was the point that I got interest in understanding what people think about cocaine. And even I found virado, and that was something different. But the markets are really different in Recife, and I think it's something that we can understand in other parts of even I don't know if here we can call to someone, but to get the drugs, but it's in Rio, and we have this the like same process in our country, and people were saying in my interviews that they can use like Uber Eats and iFood to, because it's something that they can mask, they can ask for something, but he knows that this contact has something, and they have a special way of describing the substance. It's something like the experience. It's from outside. It's imported. They had another way of thinking the substance, and it's not a problem for police, and it's not a problem for family. Because cocaine, crack, and virado are problems for families and for friends, and it's a problem. But these substances were not. But sometimes the people use the two, or they use marijuana and they use a lot of things. But when they describe this market, it's interesting. But this was the point that I got to cocaine.
Okay. So we don't have any questions online, and considering it's 7, we'll have to end. But thank you, you two, very much. I think we had a great discussion. Thank you, Jean, and you'll definitely continue our discussions in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.